Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
Face off, one by the Condor, shows top, other point fence into the slot, a shot and score! Josh Perry, in double,
Left point long drive, save Kinetic, what a stop by Matisse with the left pad! Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net, and denied was Matt Schicker by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse Kinetic.
D-laner from the red line sends it in, Hofer into his net, he stops it, Hofer looking, Hofer firing toward the empty net, and scores! Are you kidding me? Joel Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup playoffs!
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out, right side with Fair, looks like cutting to the net, Fair, and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello, hello, hello from inside the Matrix.
And from the Wonder Wharf.
Welcome to the Calder Farmstead podcast, episode number 146 for Friday, October 27th, 2023. If you were hoping for a podcast featuring harvesting late season crops, we are not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast. My name is Thomas A. Anderson, a program writer for MetaCortex Software Company.
And I'm Tina Belcher, prolific writer of erotic friend fiction.
We thank you always for tuning in with us.
So if you are new to hearing Mr. Anderson and I talk about hockey, first thing is first, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button wherever you're catching us from so that you don't have to go looking for new episodes. They'll come right to you. If you do like what you're seeing or you're listening to, don't forget to hit the like button on YouTube, leave a review if your podcast app like Spotify, Apple, Amazon, whatever it is, lets you do that cool thing. If it doesn't let you do that cool thing, oh well. And also if you don't like what you're seeing or you're listening to, never mind then, just go do literally anything else.
So on this episode, we're going to discuss the goings-on of 8 AHL teams: Hartford, Hershey, Laval, Cleveland, Grand Rapids, Milwaukee, Colorado, and Tucson. Sarah and I both watch a lot of AHL games, and we're going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced stats to help us break it down. If you are new to our show, you might want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're catching us from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO, which we're going to be talking about today, or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries or Royal Road, both of which come up today, go check that out, so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes seeing the new PWHL team name trademarks. You'll never get that time back, so next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking American Hockey League hockey? All right, in lieu of league-wide news, I don't really think anything happened that we need to talk about. The All-Star Game got a sponsor, and nobody cares. So we'll just dive right into it. Sarah, where are we headed first?
We are starting out with Hartford. We're going to take a look at the Hartford Wolfpack, who are out to a 4-0 start so far this season. Loosely, what is powering this great start for them? Is it 5-on-5 scoring, special teams, defense, goaltending, the power of friendship?
I think the answer here might surprise you, but I think it's special teams. Currently, the Wolfpack are scoring 77.8% of goals 5-on-5. That's the best in the AHL currently. But if you go back to last season, they were 8th in the AHL in 5-on-5 goal differential with 54.5% of the goals scored in their favor at 5-on-5. So that's not necessarily new. And let's be honest, 77.8% 5-on-5 goal share is unsustainable, but that's okay. Like, I don't think that's what's powering this necessarily, because last season special teams dragged them down because the power play was awful and the PK was very not great. They were 27th in net power play and 21st in net penalty kill last season. Currently, they're 13th in net power play and 5th in net penalty kill in the AHL. To me, that's the answer for why your team is succeeding, is that special teams are actually doing their job so far this season. And that's not to shortchange how great Domingue and Garand have been so far this season. I think both of them have played about as lights out as you could ask. Domingue is currently boasting a 967 save percentage. Garand, lagging behind at 965. Now, a few notes here. First, as I mentioned, that goals for percentage on 5-on-5 is going to come down. No one is 77% good. Since 2017, no team in the AHL has finished the season north of 63% goals for 5-on-5. I do like this Hartford team, but they aren't 14% better 5-on-5 than any team in the last 5 or so years. So that number is going to come down. Second, that number will also drop as their all situations PDO is currently 107.56, which is second in the AHL. I think we all know by now that's not sustainable, but for any new listeners out there, PDO is a measure of puck luck. 100 is a long-term sustainable value for puck luck. And as soon as you get more than 101 or 99, you're due to kind of come back to 100. Hartford is at 107.56, and while they look like a good team, it's easy to overvalue them and any team in this spot, because when pucks are going in for them and staying out for opponents, it's easy to kind of just be like, oh, we're great. And that's, there are good things that are powering this, but also good luck plus doing good things makes you look like a god, hence 4-0. One last thing I do want to mention here in the doom and gloom portion is while I think that special teams are driving the success, I don't know that their special team success is sustainable either. Having watched the film of their special team shifts, I think it's worth mentioning that while, yes, they've scored some power play goals and killed some penalties, I expect this to regress a little bit. Let's start with the power play. In the offensive zone, entries look discombobulated at times, and it seems like they're getting set up through kind of a lot of broken plays where, it's not exactly working out, but they're managing to recover the puck in the offensive zone more or less in spite of that. And at this point in the season, that's pretty normal. I would hope this would get cleaned up over time as people become more familiar with the systems, build some chemistry, and so on. But a lot of the concerns we talked about last season with how Hartford operates its power play still show up here. There's still a lot of working the puck along the perimeter and not making many efforts to get shots from the home plate area, as well as get one-timers from across Royal Road. We said that last season that Hartford set up in the 1-3-1 formation, but didn't maximize its potential, and that still looks evident early on. Again, it's early. I'm not trying to say their power play will be terrible all year, but just the numbers that they're putting up, the goals that they're scoring, don't match the way it's going in, I would say. On the penalty kill, I think they've become more aggressive, which I like. They're forechecking a little more tenaciously, which is good. But they've also gotten caught being too aggressive and out of position and bailed out by good goaltending. And while I think Domingue is a solid AHL goalie and have positive projections for Garand, I don't think either are going to be able to sustain a save percentage north of 960. In the last 10 AHL seasons, the team record for save percentage is 925. Hartford is at 966. This will come down. And all of that is to say, while this team is off to a hot start, fans should temper expectations a bit here. I think the Wolfpack banking points early in the season is good, and certainly a good sign for the season, but no team is this good, and this pace isn't sustainable by any AHL team. Look at Utica when they started the season 13-0, or where Henderson started 11-1 in their inaugural season. Both managed to carry that success well into the season, but they tapered off eventually and then collapsed in the playoffs. That's not to say Hartford will do the exact same thing here come the postseason, but just an example of a team that's what it can sustain and what it can't. I think Hartford's a good team. I think they win a lot of games this year. I think they're still clearly a playoff team. But let's not go with this idea that they're going to sustain what's been going on so far this year. They're going to lose games. They're going to struggle a little bit at times. That's the nature of hockey over a 72-game season. There's still 94% of the season left to be played. Let's not get let's not overreact here.
You mean we're not picking a winner on day one of the season? No. One player you did mention is Dylan Garand, and you mentioned that he's someone who you have kind of a positive projection for. We didn't talk about him much in the season outlook episode, which is astonishing given how long it is and how many players we talked about. You would have thought we'd leave no stone unturned. So let's turn that stone over now. Let's dive into him. What do you see from Dylan Garand, and what do you think that he can build on, in terms of success from that playoff run that he had?
I definitely think there is something that he can build on here. Grant is someone who can easily make you forget he's just 21 years old and has all of 40 professional games under his belt, because he plays with a level of poise and polish that makes you think he's a lot more experienced. Grant is rarely caught off his angle or out of position. He moves very well. He takes calculated risks with some of his choices in depth, but he tracks the puck at such a high level, as well, he's very smooth and controlled in his movement, that he's rarely ever guilty of kind of overshooting his mark, even on these big post-to-post explosive pushes. You always feel like he's in control, even when there's chaos going on around him. That level of technical meticulousness, plus his athleticism and sharp movement, are why I think he has an NHL future written on him, even if necessarily it may not be with the Rangers. That does happen to a lot of goalies when there is a firmly entrenched number one in their system that still has a lot of years left on him, like Shesterkin. Now, as with any player in the AHL, there are some areas to improve on. Grant is considered a bit undersized for a modern goalie, as he's only 6'1", which is bonkers to think about, that 6'2" is basically now the minimum height requirement to be a normal height goalie. But that occasionally also, being kind of undersized, can lead to pucks trickling through his armpits and such that like a bigger goalie might have stopped. Every time I see one go through him, or like a smaller goalie like Dustin Wolf, I'm like, man, if you were 6'3", I don't think that happens. I do still think he's making adjustments to the quality of shooter he's now facing in the AHL, and it does feel like he's gotten sniped clean a few times last season by guys who are AHL snipers, and that quality of shot is not something he would have been used to facing in lower leagues. But that's literally the adjustment all goalies have to make coming into the AHL. And for one, I have faith that he'll continue to improve on that. That all being said, at 21 years old, he has a lot of runway left, but is already showing promising signs. It wouldn't shock me to see him get a look from the Rangers should anything happen to, 37-year-old Jonathan Quick. Or even if nothing happens to Quick, he's been a little meh the past, year or so. If Grant makes enough noise at the AHL level, he's still waiver ineligible. So if the Rangers can make an emergency recall, or squeeze in a couple dollars at the end of the season, I think we could see Grant get some reward cups of coffee in the NHL towards the end of the season, or maybe kind of in some spot duty along the way. I don't know that that's always going to be Louis Domingue's role, especially with teams are still playing chicken with Tampa Bay out there on waiver claims. But I think there's a lot more we could talk about Hartford here, but I think that's also a good place to leave it. Let's move on. Sarah, where are we going next?
We are headed to the returning champions, the Hershey Bears. And if there has been one glaring deficiency for this team over recent years, it has been special teams. They haven't had both the power play and the penalty kill finish in the top half of the league in net efficiency in a proper regular season since 2015. So a little asterisk there, proper regular season. Currently in the young season, the Bears power play is tied for 8th in net power play and tied for 11th in net penalty kill. So what is going right for the special teams units in Hershey this season?
Important side note, they are 8th and 11th as of before the Wilkes-Barre-Scranton game. They're still, regardless of what, I know that game did not go well for them, but they're still should be 2 top, 15 units. But aside from that opening game of the season where they gave up a power play goal and went over 3, and the other night in Wilkes-Barre, I think I've seen a lot that I like here. Side note, teams routinely lose on championship banner raising nights. Like, as someone who bets sports, anytime I see a banner raising, I'm like, bet against. Always bet against the team raising the banner. I don't know why it is, but it's just a thing. Chicago lost in 2022. Charlotte lost in 2019. Toronto lost in 2018. I don't know why this is a thing that happens. Perhaps something about fondly remembering last season distracts them from the task at hand, or championship teams routinely have to make hard roster moves in the offseason and just don't have the same pieces, or just weird coincidence. But the fact the last 4 Calder Cup champions lost their banner-raising home opener the next season is something to just think about. I'd love to know what it is, like that record is across AHL or NHL history, but I have better things to be at. To answer your question here, let's start with the penalty kill. As we talk about all the time, effective penalty killing takes 3 things. First thing is not taking penalties. Hershey is currently 18th in the AHL for minor penalties taken. That's not great. And while some amount of stupid penalties are going to be taken when you employ someone like Dylan McElrath on the roster, penalties are something you want to avoid. There is room for improvement here if you're Hershey. Second is solid forechecking. The Bears have done a much better job this season than what I've seen forechecking on the penalty kill. They're disrupting zone entries, forcing teams to play dump and chase on the power play at a much higher rate than what we've seen in previous seasons. I think some of this is personnel based, as the Bears have more defensemen in the lineup this season who have good defensive skating. That means more than they just skate backwards or real good. It means they pivot well, they don't lose speed, they have good four-way mobility. That enables them to stand up and defend the blue line on the penalty kill, and that's one area that looks much improved compared to last season. That hasn't been the case through every PK. As Matthew Maggio's power play goal was him just walking in unencumbered and rifling past one past Mitch Gibson. But in general, I think this has looked a lot better so far in this young season. Last thing for an excellent PK is controlled aggression in zone. The Bears definitely appear to be more aggressive in puck pursuit this season and have shown a willingness for their PK to put pressure on puck carriers a lot higher in the zone. Meaning, like, if that puck goes up towards the blue line, you're still seeing Bears players get on it and press. That's not something you see across the league from penalty kills. And that additional aggression can backfire, though, as the higher up in zone you put pressure, the more open space there is behind you, and the more it opens up that east-west Royal Road passing lane. The Bears haven't exactly gotten caught doing that yet, but there have been opportunities for it. But no one's been able to exploit it yet. It's still early in the season, and literally every AHL team is still working out some execution-based issues. So I'm not concerned yet, more just pointing out something that hasn't been fully corrected yet. For the power play, I think the biggest shift has been an increase in intentional plays being made to the bumper and the net front. The most maddening things about Bears power plays in seasons past was similar to Hartford. They'd set up in this 1-3-1 power play formation that basically every team now uses, and then they'd run the same outside shots with little pre-shot movement or set up kind of like the kind of power play that teams ran in the 90s. I remember Martin Farivari, Paul Ledoux, Bobby Nardella, Lucas Johansson, Cody Franzen. There's one more I can't think of. Anyway, Cameron Schilling. Just winding up and taking slap shots into traffic over and over and over again. And just hearing that puck get blocked or hit the end boards or get stopped cleanly by the goalie, they rarely, if ever, went in. Martin Farivari played like 80 games for the Bears over a couple seasons. He had power play one time in almost all of them. He scored 0 power play goals. This season, though, after going through that much pain of watching defensemen just crank slap shots from distance, this season I've seen a lot more intentional plays being made down low, below the goal line, to the half wall, looking to set up plays in the slot, as well as creating plays to the bumper, going across Royal Road. These are the high danger plays that other more modern schemed power plays have been generating for a couple seasons now. Welcome to the party, Hershey. And the Bears look like they've definitely started to wise up here. Like, I think about Ethan Frank and Perrick Dubé's power play goals against Cleveland, for example. Ethan Frank's power play goal against Providence. That's 3 of the 4 power play goals they've scored this season on those looks to the slot and across Royal Road using a play below the goal line. And that's not to mention the many times they've forced goalies to make big saves on shots from the slot, plays to the bumper, plays across Royal Road. I'm not trying to get my hopes too high here, but I've liked what I've seen from the Bears power play and the way it's structured and the way they're executing. If they can stick with this, we should see this unit get on the board more often than in the past. And maybe finally, the Bears can have 2 respectable special teams units at the same time.
So turning to looking at goaltending, Mitch Gibson got the start for Hershey on the 22nd, had a pretty respectable game. 2 goals allowed on 21 shots. The Bears won in overtime over the Sound Tigers. We didn't get to break his game down in the let's not call it a preview, but seeing as he is likely to be part of the Bears' plans in net this season, let's talk about him. So what did you see from Mitch Gibson so far?
I would say Mitch Gibson's game is defined in 2 ways. One is high-end technical details. He moves well, has excellent save selection, gets from one position on the post to the top of the crease in a very fluid manner. The other part of his game is aggressiveness. He loves to play at the top of his crease and challenge shooters. He'll even get past the top of his crease and come out crazy far. One area that I think needs improvement, though, is his tendency to ignore backdoor threats and kind of just anchor on shooters. His aggressiveness doesn't help this, as if a pass gets through Royal Road, he often is not prepared to, even try and make like a desperation push across, highlight reel save. That's going to be a problem moving forward into the AHL, where opponents will be savvier than he's ever faced and will exploit plays the back door as often as possible. A lot of offenses, 2-on-1 plays, they're designed to do exactly this thing. But I also think him playing on Hershey is a little bit of homecoming for him. He's from Phoenixville, PA. It's a small town about 90 minutes outside of Hershey. He played for Texas for the Lone Star Brahmas in the NAHL, then went to Central Illinois in the USHL. Then he went to Hartford for 4 years. Coming to Hershey means there's a good chance his family and friends can come see him play regularly. And as we're seeing more and more athletes take trades and signing in free agency to be closer to friends and family, it's clear that him getting to be close to home is probably not nothing to him. I think that adds a little extra motivation for him to go out there and ball out game in and game out. He has work to do on his game. Some of his aggressiveness maybe needs to get reined in a little bit. He needs to be a little more aware of the play in front of him and make adjustments accordingly. But every AHL player needs to make adjustments and make changes and try and work on some things. But I think there's a lot to like in Mitch Gibson's game. Hershey has kind of a crowded goalie room right now, with Clay Stevenson and Bjorklund, as well as Hunter Shepard, who I'm assuming is due back from Washington any day now. Congrats to him on the first NHL win. But I think Mitch Gibson deserves to be in this rotation. I think he's probably the shiniest goalie prospect in the Capitals system right now. That's not to say he, pans out as the best, but I think he's the one I'm the most interested in having an NHL future as we look at it right now. All right, I think that is a good place to leave it. Let us move on and talk about the Laval Rocket. Sarah, they've had a rough start to the season with a current record of 1-4. They're 6th out of 7 teams in the North Division by points and dead last by points percentage. We both thought the Rocket would have a good season, but is this slow start showing off some of the problems we identified in last week's marathon show? What's behind Laval's struggles and how do they fix it?
So first off, scoring, that is not Laval's problem right now. They have scored 23 goals through 5 games. That places them 3rd in the league, just behind Abbotsford and Henderson. The problem is keeping things out of their own net. They have allowed 25 goals against, which is the most in the league. So that's bad, and we'll touch on that in a second. Scoring is up, obviously, for Laval. Like I said, that's not a problem for them. It could be more up, however, if maybe they spent more time at even strength. They currently have 82 penalty minutes. That is 4th in the league. The PK is okay. We've talked in the past on here about Laval's penalty kill just being atrociously bad. Right now, it's just sort of meh. They're at 83.3%, 15th in the league. So, they're not getting super burned when they're down a man. There are still, 15 plus teams worse than them, but it's not great. And that's a lot of time to be spending having to defend in that position. And maybe if they were in the box less, they'd have more opportunities to score and would not have to worry so much about the fact that they can't keep pucks out of their own net. Which brings us to the more important issue, which is goaltending for Laval. We talked last week about how several teams are playing this 3-headed goalie monster routine up in the NHL because everyone's afraid of sending a guy down on waivers. And obviously that is having an impact in the AHL. And that's part of what's going on here with Laval. Montreal continues to play chicken with Tampa Bay and any other organization who's going to wind up needing a mysterious third goalie problem to be solved. Montreal currently has Jake Allen, Sam Montembeault, and Caden Primo all just hanging out with the Canadians. Primo has gotten into 1 game. Montembeault's got 2. Jake Allen obviously is getting the most starts. But Primo should not be there. He should be with Laval. He has played 123 games over 4 seasons with the Rocket, and his career numbers aren't amazing, but they're certainly better than what Laval is getting from their current tandem. Right now they have Straussman and Jakub Dobesh. Mann is in his second North American season professionally. He did spend one season in Sweden after leaving college. Last year, he split time between the AHL and ECHL in the Shark system. Dobish, this is his first professional season after 2 years at, some college. We're not going to talk about it. But these are two goaltenders who are relatively untested in terms of AHL professional level hockey. And you're getting the results that you would expect from that. Mann is 0-2-1. He's got a 4.55 goals against average. Dobish 1-1-0, 5.62 goals against average. I don't think you even need to know anything about goaltending stats to know that those are not the numbers that you want to see. So Laval can be doing anything they want in terms of scoring. They could have 50 goals right now, but if they're not getting that puck out of their net, if they're not getting the work that they need from their current goaltending tandem, things are going to continue to look pretty ugly. And I think it's a pretty easy suggestion to say that things aren't going to get better unless and until Caden Primo is returned to Laval. So, when we circle back to the Rocket in, however many weeks it takes us to get through the full cycle of AHL teams, it's going to be interesting to see where things have gone. Is Primo still up in the NHL? Are these teams still playing chicken with each other? Or have they returned their actual starting goaltender to the AHL where he should be? And if not, have Mann and Dobish figured it out? I think that's going to have a lot to say about what is going to happen with Laval's season. And we just won't know until all of these teams give up on trying to beat Tampa, who may not even want to claim their third goaltender, honestly.
I think that's the thing that's Jonas Johansson has been
fine.
Good. Yeah, he has back-to-back shutouts so far. It's going to be funny. Andrei Vasilevsky is going to be activated from IR, and then all of a sudden you're going to see 5 different goalies going.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right. We had our eyes on Josh Waugh, unrelated to Patrick Waugh, but I'm seriously considering starting the rumor that that's his nephew or something.
I'm okay with that.
Some direct, indirect relative, second cousin or whatever. But we had our eyes on him last week as a young player to watch. It's almost like he listened to the show because he's already performed very well for the Rocket. Currently, Waugh has 11 points in 5 games. That sounds unsustainable to me, Sarah, having done this show for way too long and looked at things like this. Exactly how unsustainable is this?
All right. So before I answer that question, let's just do a little bit of background on Josh Waugh. Last season, he came out of juniors, 99 points in 55 regular season games for the Sherbrooke Phoenix over in the Q, 24 points in 14 playoff games. If you listened to the preview, outlook, whatever you want to call it, episode, one of the things that we talked about frequently when we talk about young players is that guys coming up from juniors, guys coming up from the NCAA, wherever, they're not usually big impact players right away. And that's because the jump to professional hockey is harder than the jump between the AHL and the NHL. I, in my own work covering AHL teams, have talked to players who have made that jump, and they all universally say, this is so much harder than I thought it was going to be. This is so much more work. This is so much more that I have to learn and catch up with. Making that jump from being the best 19 or 20-year-old on your team to being a 20-year-old on an AHL team is a pretty significant jump. So how is he doing this? How does he have 11 points in 5 games for a guy who we, didn't expect to really be an impact player right away? Shooting percentage is the big thing. Right now, he is currently shooting at 25%. That is great. Good for him, but that is not sustainable. Even if you look back at his juniors career, his shooting percentage in juniors was 16.1% in a league that is known for ridiculously high scoring at times. Last year in the AHL, the number of skaters who played more than 20 games with a shooting percentage of 25% or more, and I put those caveats on it. 1, because we had 2 goalies who scored a goal last year. So we do not count them. And 2, no, I'm not counting the player who played 1 game, scored 1 goal and 1 shot. No, that doesn't count. So I looked at 20 games or more. The players who had a shooting percentage of 25% or more, we had Lane Peterson. He had a 35.4% shooting percentage, 17 goals on 48 shots. That was also split over 2 different teams. And then Philip Engeres, 31.3%, 5 goals on 16 shots. Again, also split over 2 teams. And that's it. That's the list. There was like one other player who came in at like 24 point something percent, but I gave myself a cutoff and that was it. So suffice it to say that this is probably going to nosedive eventually for Joshua Waugh. Also consider 5 of those 11 points came in one game. He had a 3-goal, 2-assist performance against Rochester. So that has like obviously inflated what we're seeing from him. But a couple of things of note about him that make me think that, is this sustainable the way it is? No. Is he going to be a very good player? I think yes. First off, all of his assists so far are primary assists. So we're not getting a ton of noise of that, like I touched the puck 35 seconds before anything even happened. He's directly involved in each of these goals. The goals that he's scoring are good, skilled goals. There was a goal against Abbotsford on the power play. It was a net front pass from Yoel Armia. Waugh basically had an empty net to shoot into because the goalie got pulled over to the side. Perfect play from that team to set him up. Against Rochester, in the 3 goals that he scored in that game, it was basically almost the exact same play in goal number 1. Goal number 2 was a Rochester turnover that he and Sean Farrell just took off with and had a great play to score on. Goal number 3, he was left in front alone, in front of goaltender Michael Hauser. So, the shots that I'm seeing him take are good shots. These aren't goals that are just going in off his shins or deflecting them off of like anything. These are goal scorers' goals. He's clearly talented. He has a knack of finding open spots on the ice, and his teammates have the knack of finding him where he is. These are all things that are going to set him up for success. A 25% shooting percentage is unsustainable. Like, there's no way around that. No one does it. Like, it's just how it is. But I don't think that means that you should be looking at him and say, well, he's going to suck in 3 weeks. I do think that he's going to be a very good player for this team. I think he has a lot of promise for Laval. I just need Rocket fans to not freak out when he goes some games without scoring. But I do like what I'm seeing from him, and I do think he's a legit player. He just has had some kind of inflated stats so far this season.
I also think, too, 25% isn't sustainable, but 18 might be.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a huge drop, but it is lower. I think also, too, you'll see a lot of guys who come into the league like this, and they'll start hot for 2 reasons. Number one, they're desperate to make a big impact right away and hope they can get that kind of snap call up to the big club and stick there. And 2, a lot of teams do not have their defenses kind of hardwired in yet. It's still a little loosey-goosey. We're still seeing sloppy plays. It's a skillful goal to score, the ones that he has. But, teams are not going to leave him just all alone in the front of the net in the future. And eventually those kind of plays will get taken away from him just because teams won't let him do it. That's, again, not to say that he's not a skilled player, not going to be someone we're looking to have, maybe be an impact player. But, right now, the model has him looking like he is literally Wayne Gretzky of the AHL. No, he's not that. He will come back down to earth, and even still, he should have, I think, the impact that I was questionable of, but the model seems to pick right around a top 6 kind of second-line player. I think that's still very reasonable and respectable. That all being said, let's move on. Let's go to Cleveland. Sarah, last season, the power play in Cleveland helped keep the team alive through many of their other woes. Never quite seemed to matter who was in the lineup. The power play just clicked at a scary rate. This year, it hasn't exactly been the case. What do things look like for the new look black and blue monsters on the man advantage?
Well, new look jerseys, they get the seal of approval from me. I like them. New look power play is not getting my seal of approval right now. This year, things are very different. I actually wanted to do this whole section with just a bunch of Halloween, scary, spooky puns. But my brain wasn't functioning on that level. So just pretend there's a bunch of puns in here. But no, this year it's not great for the Monsters. They are 1-15, 1 out of 15 to start the season on the power play, currently giving them the worst power play in the league. That is a far cry from last year. They ended the season as the 11th ranked power play in the league after several stretches of just sheer dominance. Ended up around the 11th. So what is happening on the man advantage for the Monsters? In the clips that I reviewed, they just looked slow. Not really seeing a ton of urgency, not seeing a ton of organization from them. A lot of kind of getting stymied by the team that they're playing against, and they take the puck back into their own end, they regroup. And I get it. Sometimes you need to reset. You need to kind of just figure out where you're going with stuff. If you're risk averse, then yeah, you're going to take those 10, 15 seconds, get everything set up again, try to get a better zone entry and a better chance. But what is a power play without some risk? If you're spending your whole time just going back into your own end and starting over again, what are you doing here? You have to be willing to take some chances. And some of this has to be just pure statistics, right? Shooting percentages are going to go back up. You have to get luckier eventually. That's just how this game works. But in the clips I reviewed, I also wasn't seeing them get many shots off. There have been some near misses, pucks that just kind of trickle outside of the net, shots that could have rolled a different way, things that aren't going to count as a shot because the goaltender didn't touch it. But, had things just gone a couple inches the other way, maybe we would have had a different situation. But that doesn't matter. The pucks aren't going in the net where they should be going. They seem to be fairly easy to pick off at the blue line, easy for opposing teams to disrupt their zone entries. I don't want to sound like that guy on the show. If any one of our return listeners know that this is not my hockey shtick, but they need to be harder to play against while they have these opportunities. I just wasn't seeing a lot of oomph from them, which is a very statistical term in hockey. Oomph. I just overall, I just was really struck by how little momentum they seem to get anytime they're on the power play. I'll be really curious to see, again, when we circle back to them, have they shaken up their units any? I did notice in sort of limited sample sizes that it seemed like the second unit was doing a little bit more in terms of having sustained pressure when they were on the ice, which means a lot of wasted time as they try to get that first unit to go, and then the first unit struggles to keep things in the zone. So I think that this is a little bit of everything. I don't think it's any one particular problem. I think that we have, adapting to new coaching systems, coaching styles. Maybe there's different expectations from the coaches this year. We have players adapting to each other. We have players who just maybe aren't gelling well together, and someone needs to sort of shuffle things around. And then we have the fact that this is just the most frustratingly random sport on earth. And, that's contributing to it. But I want to see them be more aggressive. I almost would rather see them get scored on shorthanded, but know that they were trying, trying to do something than what I'm seeing right now, which is just a power play is supposed to be fun to watch. You're supposed to get excited, and I was not excited watching any of these. I think they have the personnel to get it done. I just feel like the chemistry isn't there yet for them.
I think the other big thing, too, if memory serves me correctly, aren't the Monsters one of the youngest teams in the AHL this season? Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of pieces, especially on that blue line, that are new, different, talented, but inexperienced. And I think, typically speaking, your defenseman is usually one of the people who's carrying the puck either as the initial puck carrier or part of the kind of slingshot concept that you see teams use. Or even if they're not using slingshot breakouts, that, two going forward, kind of anchoring on the blue line, one spinning around, the 5 back entry you see, along with the center lane swing plays. All of those have usually the defenseman as the puck carrier. And if you're the defenseman at the top of the point and you're 21 and you're practically crapping your pants because things happen so fast at this level, you play 4 games, it's understandable that things are not necessarily moving smoothly, and you're trying to focus more on just not screwing up than necessarily attacking. And we've talked about that a little bit in the past with the difference between attacking pucks and possession pucks, where if you get a pass from a teammate and there's a defender, right up your butt, you got to just try and make a play to keep possession of the puck. Whereas when you have, a little bit more time and space, you can turn that puck into an attacking puck and use that moment and that space to go and try and create a scoring play. And the difference between, a defending or a possession puck and attacking puck is like half a second and 2 feet. That's the difference. And when you're new to the AHL level, that difference will feel like no difference at all. You're not going to be able to tell at first. So I can definitely see how they're having some struggles of getting personnel in the right place, even though a lot of the other systems are still probably generally the same. New people and young people, and not necessarily the experience, maybe not with the system, but with moving it at that speed and those expectations is challenging.
Yeah.
That is all for us from the Eastern Conference, though. We are going to take a break here. After the break, we will get to Grand Rapids, Milwaukee, Colorado, and Tucson. If you're just here for one of the Eastern Conference teams that we talked about, and this is your jumping off point, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media. Links to our social media and more can be found at our Linktree page at linktr.ee/the Calder Farmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills, fight some agents. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
All right, this is the Calder Farmstead. Welcome back from all of our exciting information we had to give to you in our brief break. We are continuing on with our deep dives into a whole handful of AHL teams. We are headed to Grand Rapids as we continue our look at what is going on across the league. We're going to take a look at the Grand Rapids Griffins next. They are off to a 2-2 start so far this season, but Sean, you're concerned already about the Griffins, aren't you? They might be headed for some trouble here. So why don't you believe in Grand Rapids?
So goals going in your net for your team and staying out of your net tends to skew things. We're scoring, the other team isn't. Things are good. That's good, right? And in some senses, yes, but past goals and saves do not always predict future goals and saves. In fact, they rarely do. And in the Griffins case, this is where my concern comes in. Hockey is a game that has a lot of luck kind of just baked into it. It's a game played with an object made out of a very bouncy substance and rubber, and the pucks are shaped weird. Unlike balls, pucks don't consistently bounce in a predictable way, and add that it's played on ice, it's easy to see how a few good bounces can really skew who the best team is on any given night. But the thing about luck is that it's not forever, and we have a measure of puck luck to tell us when a team is getting luckier or unluckier than it should. That measure is called PDO. If you've never heard the term PDO in hockey, I'd recommend you head over to our episode 0, where we explain it in more detail, but quickly here, PDO is a measure of puck luck, and a PDO of 100 for a team is considered normal, sustainable, average luck. Anything where we're starting to get over 101 or lower than 99, and you're starting to see puck luck, good and bad, that will come back to 100 eventually. Grand Rapids right now is at 105.36. That's a lot of good luck. They're 2-2 despite having that PDO. And if you look back at all 4 games that they played against Colorado, they got greatly outplayed and outchanced in all 4 of those games, but managed to basically steal 2 on the back of great play from Michael Hutchinson and Sebastian Cossa. We talked about the strengths and weaknesses of Cossa in the season outlook marathon, and while him taking a leap forward is totally possible and borderline expected, thinking that he goes from a middling ECHL goalie to a top-tier AHL goalie in one offseason is a pipe dream. He's not going to be a .947 save percentage goalie at the end of the season, period. And when you watch the film, the defense is sloppy, some of which is to be expected as it's October and pretty much every team's defense is sloppy and will be until around American Thanksgiving-ish. That's when teams kind of start to have that switch in their head click and they start figuring out and putting it together and not leaving guys, standing alone on an island at the net front when they shouldn't be. And with a new coach and a fairly young blue line, it still may take a little bit longer for things to sink in and tighten up, but that remains to be seen. But my overarching concern here is not that the Griffins are getting good puck luck. Teams get good puck luck and bad puck luck in waves all season long. That's one of my favorite things about looking at the rolling 2-week PDO charts, is that you can see the highs and lows of teams in the season. Some are a little tighter, others are wild and swingy, and it's very fun. But it's that Grand Rapids right now is getting good puck luck, and they're still scraping out a 500 record. For context, 7 other AHL teams have a PDO north of 104 as of this recording. They're a combined 23-8 on the season. Grand Rapids is 2-2. I'm a bit concerned here, and I feel like what I've seen watching the film backs up the fact that this team has gotten good puck luck to be 2-2. But that's not great for the outlook of the season so far. Again, it's been 4 games. There's like 94% more of the season to be played. So I'm trying not to, crazily overreact to 4 games. But like, I am a little concerned.
Yeah, that's a little yikes. Let's move away from some scary math and move into looking at some prospects. We did cover 2 prospects in our season outlook marathon extravaganza for Grand Rapids, but there's always some internal debate over which 2 guys should be making the cut for the show. One who didn't was William Wallinder. We have plenty of time right now, so what can the Griffins fans expect to see from him this season?
There's a lot of NHL tools on display here. For a guy who's listed at 6'4", 204 pounds, according to the AHL website. So in reality, he's probably 6'2", 193. He can move. He shows excellent skating and 4-way mobility, which is rare in a guy his size. To find someone else of comparable size who can skate like he can, you'd have to look across the bench at Simon Edvinsson, which, yeah, seriously, it's ridiculous that Grand Rapids has 2 big dudes who can move like that, basically on the same blue line. But that skating gets put to work in transition too. He loves to lead the rush and join as a 4th forward, which is a habit that translates very well from any league to the AHL and NHL. He also has good puck skills on him that he can use, plus his skating to weave around forecheckers and find solutions during zone exits. His shot has also really taken steps forward too, and now looks to be more NHL caliber. It was real, like, stop motion looking E before, and now looks a lot more fluid. He's getting a lot more bend on it. But like so many players with nice tools, he lacks the toolbox. What that means is he has a lot of raw tools like skating, shooting, puck skills, etc., but hasn't quite gotten the awareness and ability to read the play to use them the most efficiently. Imagine having a wrench, hammer, screwdriver, drill, paintbrush, measuring tape, nails, screws, and duct tape. Now imagine you have to carry all of them in your hands without pockets the entire time you're trying to do some home improvement job. You have all the tools you need, but you can't manage them well enough to use them efficiently. That's why we say all tools, no toolbox. You need to be able to find the one you need at the moment to use it efficiently. Now, Wallinder's offensive tools may be enough to become an impact player, but he'll need to develop the vision and awareness to use them better. The other part of his game that needs work is his in-zone defense. His skating keeps him defending the rush pretty well, although there's some small aspects like gap control, which we don't need to dive into here, but that also could use some touching up. But in zone, quite simply, he floats. You'll float too. He's not the most diligent into locking onto his check and scanning over his shoulder, especially away from the puck. And he's definitely been part of the problem with the Griffins' struggles on defense so far early this season. But like most AHL prospects, there's a lot here to like, and there's a lot here that needs work. So there's going to be a lot of work necessary regardless to just him adjusting to how pro hockey is played in North America on a smaller rink with better and more physical players, because he's also making that too. The kid has never left Sweden in a hockey playing sense, ever. Like, not even for, I guess maybe for like World Juniors or whatever, but not for like a serious, season. But Wallinder has the skills, and you'll see them flash from time to time this season. I've seen 1 or 2 of them already kind of prop their heads up. But it's something that he needs to be more consistent about. He needs to find, the awareness to see the ices more broadly, especially in the defensive zone. But I think he's going to be a good player for Grand Rapids and hopefully for Detroit down the road, but he is still very much a work in progress. All right, Sarah, let's leave it there and move on to their foe in the Central Division, the Milwaukee Admirals. Sarah, it's early in the season, but the Central Division is already one close race with 5 of 7 teams tied with 4 points each. That makes it hard to figure out what to make exactly out of any of these teams. The Admirals are in the middle of that, 2 wins, 2 losses. What can we make of Milwaukee so far?
So one of the things that stood out to me most is that they're playing in a lot of very close games. 3 of those 4 games have been 1-goal affairs. One of those games went to overtime. Their 4th game was a 4-1 win over Belleville. what I see is a team that is very inconsistent. And I think that, if you've been listening to this whole show, you may notice that as a theme from some of the other teams we've talked about. It is still, they are 4 games into their season. They're still figuring it out. They're still figuring out who goes where. They're still figuring out how to get all their new players integrated into the system. Defense is basically optional for everyone, it feels like, at this point. And so there's a lot of work to do to get this team up to the Milwaukee Admirals that we think that they can be. But they're very inconsistent from game to game in terms of their performance. It's wildly varying in terms of shots taken versus shots allowed, special teams. You're just not getting the same team from night to night, despite it being essentially the same guys on the roster. This so far, despite the results of, at least winning some games, is really looking like a team that can be frustrating to watch because you're not going to necessarily know what you're going to get from night to night. For example, just looking at the power play, they were 0 for 6 one night against Chicago, a team that they probably should not have been 0 for 6 against. The next night, they were 1 for 2 against Texas. The next game, 0 for 5 against Toronto. The next game, 1 for 1 against Belleville. So I feel like this tells us 2 things. 1, inconsistency in terms of performance on power plays. 2, inconsistency in officiating. You're telling me there was just 1 penalty in that Belleville game? I didn't watch the whole game, but I've watched a lot of hockey in my life. Feels unlikely. But so we're just not seeing the same team, despite regardless of who the opponent is, regardless of the situations. It's just very different every night with them. They are doing well in terms of getting the puck, making things happen with it, but they're not scoring in a way that gives me a ton of confidence that they can bank wins essentially for when things get rough later in the season, when Nashville gets hurt and starts pulling all of their players. At the very, very top of the show, we were talking about Hartford and how Hartford has like a 4-0 start to this season. And is that sustainable for them? Probably not, but might as well bank all those points while you can. And we're not seeing that here. We're seeing this sort of inconsistent struggle. I just don't have a lot of confidence right now in this team. Against Belleville, they were held to just 15 shots total in the game. Meanwhile, just a few nights before, against Toronto, a team that I think we all probably would agree is a better team than Belleville, the Admirals had 17 shots in 1 period against the Toronto Marlies. And so this is very much a Jekyll Hyde kind of experience with the Admirals. It's a team that I don't quite know what to make of yet. They'll look unstoppable in one game. The next night, they struggle to get 3 shots in a period, and yet they win the game anyway. So this is a very roller coaster. I mean, this is hockey. It is what it is. I feel like there's going to be a lot of ups and downs for this team, particularly in the opening weeks of the season as they continue to get situated. But right now, they're just so hard to evaluate because I can watch 2 different games from them and get 2 totally different teams for no discernible reason.
Yeah, and that's fair. A lot of it you can just kind of point to and say, yeah, it's October.
Right.
Carl will get this done. But I will say officiating is always consistent in this level, Sarah. I don't even know what you're talking about. Refereeing in professional hockey is more consistent than time zones. It's
what? Unbelievable. How was I led so astray?
A missed penalty in the American League? Gasp. Never. All right. Well, we talked about Denis Gurianov in our season outlook marathon, which is funny because I think you can actually run a marathon in a shorter amount of time.
Oh my God, you can. If you're really good, you can do 2 if you're one of those crazy Olympic people.
I don't think that there isn't a human being alive that can run, what would that be, 52 point whatever miles? No, nobody can do that. I don't care if you're going to Google examples. I don't care if you're Google robots. Anyway, we talked about Denis Gurianov in our outlook and wondered how we would adapt to being back in the AHL for the first time since 2020. What are we seeing from the Admirals' newest veteran player here, Sarah?
So he's someone who we had wondered even just what we were going to get from him, right? Anytime you have a player who has spent a significant amount of time in the NHL, you wonder when they get back to this level, how are you going to be? Are you going to have a chip on your shoulder? Are you going to be ticked off about the fact that you're back down here? Just what's the outlook like? Sometimes you get these players and they get a bad attitude about it. They don't go down and work. They don't go down and be a good teammate. We've seen it. You wondered if you were going to get anything productive from him, or if he's just not going to be a team player about the fact that his option right now is play in the AHL. But right now he is leading his team in points. He has 5 points over 4 games. That doesn't sound like a lot until you consider the fact that this isn't a team that has scored a whole bunch at all in general. Milwaukee has scored 10 goals total this season, which means he is factored in on 50% of their goals. He is getting first-line minutes with Mark Jankowski, Joachim Kamel, and so he's getting the opportunity to be an impact player for this team, and he's stepping up. You watch him, you can tell he's engaged, he's using his teammates. He's not doing what you see some veteran NHL guys do when they get stuck back down in the AHL. You see them, hog the puck. They try to make plays for themselves. They're not necessarily team players. They're not using the guys around them. And that, might be great for padding someone's individual stats, but that's not great for you being viewed as a good teammate. And if there is one lesson I have learned through all the years of covering the AHL, it's that someone is always watching you. And if you are the guy who comes down here who doesn't want to be here, and you make it obvious that you don't want to be there, people are going to remember that. And you are probably not going to leave because people are going to remember that was your attitude. So obviously I don't know him. I don't know him off the ice, but at least on ice, I'm seeing a player who is engaged and who wants to just make the team better. Watching him play, he still has that big, powerful shot. In the game against Chicago, he scored the tying goal against them. It was just a big one-timer from the circles. If he's using that kind of shot, I don't need to see finesse from him. I don't need to see him skating up and trying to make some fancy goal. If he's just going to blast it from the circle, great, do it. And so, I was curious to see what I was going to get from him when I sort of honed in on watching some of his shifts, but I'm not seeing a player who is dejected about the fact that he is playing in Milwaukee. He is contributing, and like I said, this isn't a team that is producing a whole bunch of offense yet, and yet he is involved in 50% of it, which I think is pretty good.
Yeah, that definitely will stand out. Also, if he's just going to crank one-timers from the circles, I think Joachim Kamel is going to have a problem because that's his game. We're going to have a John Cena and Idris Elba meme of he does what I do but better.
Rock, paper, scissors over it.
All right, Sarah, I think that is a good place to leave Milwaukee. We will head to the Pacific Division, bloated and overinflated as it is, and we will talk about the Colorado Eagles. The Eagles are populated with a lot of experienced veteran players, but one thing that's been a struggle for this team so far is having any sort of consistency in scoring. They've been limited to 2 or fewer goals in 5 of their 6 games. We already talked about the other half of those games they played in Grand Rapids, but how is this happening to the Eagles, and how do they fix it?
So as one of my colleagues in the day job likes to say, hope is not a strategy. But the Eagles need to hope that they find someone who is a dynamic scorer somewhere. The lack of scoring isn't for lack of trying. As we talked to a little bit earlier, if you were tuned into the Grand Rapids section of this show, Colorado opened their season with 4 games against Grand Rapids. In those 4 games, they recorded an average of 39.75 shots per game. So they were routinely putting 40-plus shots a night on Grand Rapids goalies. Riley Tufte leads the team with 25 shots. And yet, despite all of that, they have scored 12 total goals, 6 of which came in 1 game. That's good for you for that 1 game, not good for you for the other. They won 2 of those 4 games. They're getting a ton of shots. That's great, but they're not fantastic quality shots here. We got great performances from Sebastian Cossa and Michael Hutchinson, but I wouldn't say that Colorado got goal lead in these games. I wouldn't say that, either of those goaltenders had to make a bunch of, highlight reel, throw themselves at the puck kind of shots or stops to make a save. And as someone who has followed the Kings for many years, a team that routinely would put 40 plus shots on a goalie and then still lose anyway because they put all of those shots directly at the logo on the goalie's chest, I know this feeling. I know the feeling of watching Colorado do this and put 46 shots on a goalie in a game and then lose anyway. Colorado fans, I feel you right here in my heart. Hockey is a random game. We know that. But sometimes the quality over quantity idea, or vice versa, it takes too much hold of you need to find the happy medium. You can't just take 50 shots but put them all directly on the logo and think that you're going to get a different result. But you also can't just sit there and pass up shots just because you're looking for a perfect one. Sure, maybe you get lucky, a puck rolls in, it bounces off the goalie, rolls up his shirt and over his back. But what if it doesn't? You can't plan for that to be your strategy. I want to see this team find more of a happy medium. Don't necessarily want to see them passing up shots. But maybe it would be nice if they were a little more choosy. 40 plus shots per game is a fun stat to look at. It's certainly going to drive up any sort of shot metric statistic that we're looking at here. But these aren't shots that are necessarily making the opposing goaltender's life hard. And so I think that's why we're seeing these inflated shot totals, but we're not seeing a lot of wins from them. So I'd like to see maybe a little more creativity, a little more flair, a little less just shooting and just being oh, we got it on the goalie. That doesn't mean anything if it doesn't go in behind the goalie.
All right, Sarah, earlier in the show we talked about a player with a rather unrealistic shooting percentage, and now we're going to get one that's equally implausible. Veteran forward Peter Holland currently has 4 goals in 6 games with a shooting percentage of 25%. That's not sustainable, right?
All right, so first off, raise your hand if you are surprised that Peter Holland is in the AHL. Where did that come from? If you are wondering where Peter Holland came from, this is his return to North America after a couple of seasons away. He didn't play anywhere last year. Then he spent the preceding 3 years in Sweden and Russia. So he's come back for more over here. His 7 points over 6 games has him on pace for 84 points, which would be a career high for him as a professional. Feels like that's not going to happen. He is currently leading the team in points. We know Colorado is an older team in this league. They've got a lot of veteran guys on their roster, but that still doesn't mean that Peter Holland leads the team in scoring is something that I would be putting on my bingo card for this year. Would not have called that one. This 84 pace mark that he's at, he only hit that mark once ever in his life, aside from being a 12-year-old on a team. He hit it once in juniors, which is basically where everyone gets to boast annually about how many ridiculous points that they score. Welcome to juniors as a player who is good. So even without what we already learned today at the top of the show about how a 25% shooting percentage is pretty much wildly unlikely to be sustained over any period of time, basically no one ever does it, it feels even less likely for Peter Holland, who is battling both, age, coming back after a year away, and just not being that guy over the course of his career. He is also another player who the bulk of his points came in one game. He had 3 of those points come against Grand Rapids, which feels like where everyone sort of did some damage there. Again, he is scoring legitimate goals. One of the ones he scored against Grand Rapids was just a really excellently placed shot. It showed you, oh, this is a guy who has been around for a while. You look at this guy's shot and you're like, yep, that's a veteran player who spent a lot of time in the NHL. He walks in against the goalie, just perfectly placed. So again, this isn't like he's getting inflated numbers because of lucky bounces, fortunate screens, pucks aren't just rolling off his pants and into the net. But, I think we have a lot of history across many leagues of his career to look back on as to what type of player Peter Holland is. This is a great feel-good story for right now as a veteran player giving it one last shot, again, coming back from not playing. And obviously jumping right back in at a high level, but it feels highly unlikely that the projection of him scoring 48 goals this season, that's not real. That if Peter Holland scores 48 goals this season, like, I will find out what his favorite charity is and donate the money, because that's just not, I mean, I'd love to give money to some cool charity, but like, it's not going to happen. But like, great feel-good story, but not sustainable.
Speaking of bingo cards, Sarah, you are one square away from a bingo in several directions on our yearly bingo cards, so I will have to be donated to a cool charity if one of those hit. But also, we now have the receipts, Eagles fans. Keep this little clip in your back pocket to the end of the season. All right.
Yay!
Let's move on to the last stop on the show. Sarah, where are we going? What are we talking about?
We are headed to the desert. We're going to look at the Tucson Roadrunners, who are off to a 3-1 start this season. In our wonderfully run marathon last week, you picked them to finish last in the Pacific Division with 71 points. Obviously, it's only been 4 games. There is still 94% of the season left to be played. But does the Roadrunners start give you any pause on how you viewed the team's outlook just a week ago?
I would say not really. I think there are some positives to take away from the season so far, but I think there are big negatives that keep me mostly where I am. Let's start with the negatives here. That way we can end on a positive note and have everyone feel good when they leave. So first negative, the defense has not played well. There are a lot of scoring attempts from the slot, as well as passes going across railroad into high danger areas that just aren't being defended. There's a ton of puck watching going on by the defense during the cycle. Roadrunners are not looking over their shoulder and scanning for off puck threats, and instead just staring down puck carriers, and then look shocked when like a pass goes through a lane and there's a guy back there. That's not a good moment for you. There's also a decided lack of urgency in the defensive zone. Now, all of that has been kind of wallpapered over because Villalta's played absolutely amazing. And I thought Villalta made a lot of good growth last season in Ontario before Cal Peterson came in and demanded starts, metaphorically speaking. But if you're selling me that Matthew Villalta is now a .939 save percentage goalie on a team that still doesn't play good defense in front of him when he's never posted better than a .910 save percentage in an AHL season, well, I'm going to have to come back to you, as I'm much too busy engaging with the Prince of Nigeria and his bank account problems to be bothered with that kind of analysis at this time. Now, if you're an avid listener to the show and you catch the other parts and teams we talk about, you may be thinking to yourself, hey now, you said not to worry about some sloppiness on defense for other teams because it's basically October. It's early in the season and that's a given. Why do other teams kind of get a pass on improving on that and Tucson doesn't? To which I respond, that's fair, imaginary person, but look at how Tucson has played defense the past few seasons here with Steve Potvin at the helm and John Slaney behind the bench. It wasn't good. They started sloppy. It stayed sloppy. The majority of this defense is returning from last year, and while we talked up Max Zuber in the season outlook as a defense-first kind of player, he's one dude. Onyebuchi is the only other new addition, really, and he's basically a low-level goon. In short, I believe other teams' coaching staffs to correct some of the sloppiness, especially ones where there are more newcomers who are still getting with the program, whereas this one has the same dudes with the same coaches, and the program is pretty much what I expect to be, similar to what I've already seen. Now, those other teams, those other coaches, they've earned that faith following through in previous seasons on cleaning up that early season sloppiness. This coaching staff and the majority of the players here in Tucson haven't, and I think that's fair. Last word on negatives for Tucson here. While the offense has scored goals, it sure is hard for me to look at them and think this offense is progressing. Only of the 7 goals they've scored this season, I'd argue at least 3 of them were not repeatable ways to score goals. One was a dead angle shot, and what I mean by that is if you're a goalie and you let in a goal from like that area below like where the face-off dot is, a little bit further, so like where the bottom of the circle is to the goal line, in that like neighborhood, that's called a dead angle shot, because if you were literally just a dead body and we hung you up in the net, it should still be impossible to score because you just physically standing there doing nothing, being dead, should be able to stop any puck that goes in. So the fact that Tucson scored a dead angle goal is not something you should be thinking like, oh yeah, that's a thing that'll happen every other game. One was a weird bounce on a net front scramble. One was a deflection off a Texas defender and it looked like it was supposed to maybe be a pass to the net front, and it got tipped by a defender. It goes right over the shoulder of, I want to say it was Matt Murray at this point. But yeah, teams score those kind of goals all the time, but they're getting killed when you look at scoring chances in Tucson, both for and against, and especially by shot location. Like, this has not been an offense that when you look at process over results that you're thrilled with. All in all, I don't think the offense has done a great job of creating scoring chances. I think the defenses look porous. And if Villalta shows out to be a goalie who's closer to a .915 save percentage at the end of the season, that all looks like a team that still ends up roughly where I had them in the season outlook. So that part of it hasn't changed.
So you did say you have some positives. So let's dive into those. Let's throw a bone to the Roadrunners fans out there. What good have you seen from this team so far?
I have been really impressed with how the Roadrunners have forechecked so far this season. I thought in both Texas games and the school game against San Diego, they forechecked really well, and the system looks to have been changed for how they forecheck. From what I've seen on film, Tucson is using a hybrid forecheck, which means the forecheck changes depending on what the play looks like in front of them. In moments where opponents don't have clear possession of the puck in their own zone, Tucson has been showing this aggressive 2-1-2 forecheck. And basically what that means is they're sending two forwards after the puck carrier, typically one head on and one kind of coming in hot on the backside to take away any plays to reverse behind the net. Both guys are coming in to look to disrupt timing, put pressure on the puck carrier. This has shown some success for them as they've forced turnovers and extended offensive zone possessions. If you're watching on video, you can kind of see an example of this. Tucson's dumped the puck in here against San Diego, and you see both two skaters going full tilt right to that loose puck. They are coming to disrupt stuff. The person that is kind of supporting them, the forward behind there, is just a little bit off camera. So you can see a 2 and a 1 with an arrow. He's like a step behind where the camera is there. But that's the kind of forecheck they're using, and it's been effective. But in moments where the opponent does have clear possession of the puck, you're seeing what looks like a 1-1-3. And what that means is you'll see, and these are moments where you think like a dump in for a line change, where the other team has the puck behind the net. There's really no pressure on the puck carrier. It's very clear the other team has controlled possession of the puck. Here, Tucson has been displaying this 1-1-3 forecheck where they're sitting back in the neutral zone more, and it's a more passive forecheck where they're steering puck carriers into the boards in the neutral zone with the first and second forecheckers. So those two ones you see highlighted in the neutral zone there. Those puck carriers then run right into the wall of three Roadrunners right around the Tucson blue line. Now here, obviously, they're lined up on the red line, but as play progresses, they're going to shift back a little bit. They'll kind of meet at the blue line. And those players are then either forced to make a tremendous deke to get by, dump the puck in, or get stripped of possession. This is a much more passive forecheck, but is an effective one for clogging up the neutral zone and keeping teams from getting to have odd man rushes or controlled zone entries. This is what Barry Trotz used effectively to shut down offenses over the years, and was one of the driving systems in the Capitals Stanley Cup win, was the 1-1-3 forecheck. So I'm not saying that that's how effectively it's going to be wielded in Tucson going forward, but they've done a good job of finding it in spots so far this season, and I think that can be effective for them. I think these changes have been helpful. They've gotten Tucson some quality turnovers they've scored off of. What's more interesting about this is that this not only departs from what Tucson did last season, it departs from what Arizona did last season. Last season, Arizona played a 1-2-2, 1-1-3 hybrid. They never played a 2-1-2. Now, I haven't seen the Yotes play this season, but if the Roadrunners and Coyotes are running different forechecking schemes, well, that's a little interesting turn of events there. All right, I think that is a good place to leave things. Sarah, we do have a start bench ship today. Are you ready?
I am ready. Let's do it.
All right. We talked in our marathon episode about teams that we were really high on to start the season. So, Sarah, start bench ship here. The top team most likely to fail. So you are starting the team that is the most likely to fail. I will go first here. I am taking Laval. I still think Laval has a very deep forward group. Their defense looks solid, but just as we outlined today, I do not trust that goaltending. And if they're going to win the North Division, they're going to need to make saves at some point. And that hasn't happened yet. Again, lots of season left to go. But unless something changes big there, Caden Primo comes in and does better than what he's done in the past, they are the team that we picked to finish really high that I am the most nervous about. I'm going to bench the Coachella Valley Firebirds here. I think between them and Iowa, like one or two call-ups, I think can push Coachella to have some depth, be a little over their head. I have a lot of faith in Chris Drieger, but that faith also has to be rewarded. He hasn't been the healthiest the last season and a half, and if he's not still, that's going to show up in his, save percentage, his ability to stop pucks. Stezga is basically an unknown in North American professional hockey, so while he's looked good early on, I believe, that's still a big bag of mystery. I am then, by default, shipping Iowa. I think they're just too deep. They have people in places I trust all over, especially as they just made a veteran signing on the blue line of, the name eludes me off the top of my head, but I know I liked it. I can picture him. It's not going to come to me. All right, Sarah, what say you?
I am also starting Laval, particularly after having watched enough of Laval to put together some thoughts for this episode. I don't trust the bottom half of what they've got going on. And by bottom half, I mean the defense and the goaltending. As we've pointed out, scoring, not a problem right now for Laval. Everything else, iffy. I am going to bench Iowa. I feel like this is just born out of years of watching Iowa and being concerned that they may somehow revert to true form, or previous form, I guess. We're shipping Coachella Valley largely due to sample size here. Right now, Coachella Valley has played 3 games, which is kind of the fewest of any of our 3 teams here, and kind of the fewest in the league. Yes, right now they are last in the Pacific Division, which is not where I would have expected them to be. But they've only played 3 games, and I think that this is a team that is too deep, has too much experience on it, both on the ice and behind the bench, to really flounder for too long. If I'm wrong, I will eat those words, but right now I think they right this ship, hence being shipped.
Well played, Sarah. Well played. Okay. Basically the opposite of this question. The bottom team most likely to win. So Utica, San Diego, and Rockford were the teams that we projected with the lowest points. Sarah, start bench ship, and you're starting the one that you think is the most likely to win.
This is a gut feeling here, but I'm going to go with San Diego. I think that they have shown some promise in the games that they've played. They're 2-2 right now. I think that they have interesting pieces. They just need to put it all together. And I think it would be fun to see them shock everyone and turn it around. We will bench Utica. I have no real strong feelings on Utica. We're shipping Rockford. There is no place on planet Earth that Rockford is not going to be somehow annihilated by anything that Chicago does. Even if Rockford is really, really good, that's not going to matter come February. So, sorry, Rockford.
I take an identical take here. I wanted to put the over on San Diego at like 80 points. I think there is a very non-zero chance that team is actually competitive this year. It's not just like we put in a good effort in losing 3-2 in overtime, but like winning games straight up.
Yeah.
I'm starting them. I'm benching Utica here. I want to believe that the Devils give them something at some point. They get healthier. They send some guys down. That helps give them the reinforcements to not have to play Adirondack Thunder players in their top 6. But yeah, it's like you said, Chicago is built to lose, and they are built to send guys like Corey Perry off at the trade deadline. Those places are in the roster will get filled by Rockford Ice Hogs, and that's going to tank their season. I struggle to find a way that Rockford outshoots expectations at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And we talked about this as the thing you wasted 20 minutes doing. Sarah, start bench ship the worst PWHL trademarks for team names. Now, these may not be the team's actual names. It's just a trademark, an insurance policy. But, and also these are not the leaked team logos. These are clip art. Just wanted to make those two things clear. I will go first here. And we are starting the worst of them. The worst is the Boston Wicked. I don't think it's particularly close. Like, this is something that feels like in a substance-addled, meeting room that this guy came up with. We'll just be the Wicked. Yeah, people will love it here. Are you? No. What? What are you? Like, what would the logo for this look like? I literally just typed Wicked into the clip art generator, and this is what it came up with. But the idea that, like, if you replaced that broom with a hockey stick, that could be the logo is terrifying to me.
Oh, God, it's going to be that. That's what it's going to be. I'm so mad.
The Ottawa Alert is what I'm benching here. Alert is such a dumb name. Like, that very much makes me feel like the Ottawa Life Alert is going to be their like tongue-in-cheek name to other teams' fans. And again, what does the logo like? What does an alert logo look like? Like, none of that seems to come naturally with like a design. Whereas at least with Toronto, the torch, like, if this was New York, sure, the torch, Statue of Liberty, ta-da, I did it. How does that connect to Toronto? And they're the torch, not the torches. Also strange. But, like, at least, sure, that's a team name. It's not a great one. It's not one that relates to the city or feels very natural to the fan base. But here we are, I guess. The torch. Sarah, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm also starting the Boston Wicked as the worst. It just feels lazy. It feels like someone was like, hey, marketing team, what do you think of when you think of Boston? And then they started all just doing really bad fake Boston accents. And like, that's what they came up with. I'm benching the Toronto Torch just because, like, I don't get it. Maybe because I'm not from Toronto. Like, what significance does Torch have? I don't, it's fine. Like, I don't hate it, but it's also not great. I am shipping the Ottawa Alert only because at least with that one, they made an attempt to tie it back to historical women's hockey. So in the 1920s, there was a women's team called the Ottawa Alerts. So they at least are trying to, like, honor past history in Ottawa of women's hockey. However, no one knew this.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm shipping it because they tried, but also, like, I mean, I guess this is the problem with leaks, right? Because maybe, whatever big press release to do that they're going to like do with these is going to suddenly make some of them make more sense or be less like ChatGPT, like, or like originated names. But my actual least favorite is the Minnesota Superiors. Lake Superior doesn't even touch the part of Minnesota where this team is going to be unless it is somehow in Duluth, which I don't think it's going to be. I'm just mad about all of them.
They're all picking three of them. I mean, it was Boston Wicked, basically grab bag. But
yeah,
I will say, like, I've never seen a league that I'm interested in supporting feel like they are working to try and change my desire to support them. Like, this has felt like the dumbest way possible to start this league every step of the way.
Yeah.
From, like, you announce the team names first, then you do the draft, then you do all of those things. You have logos and stuff before you start producing content. But whatever. Best of luck, Pete.
What do we know? What do we know?
What do we know? All right, Sarah, take us home.
Well, that is it for today's show. Thank you so much for watching and or listening to the show. The Calder Farmstead is a part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other great hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs all at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcast drop-down menu in the top right portion of the website and enjoy.
And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure to subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode, subscribe wherever you are. Doing so helps others find the show, and your reviews help us improve it. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter and at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Facebook. We also have a new merch store where you can get cool shirts, hoodies, and more with our logo on them, and some stuff we've designed around players and teams in the AHL. Links to all of that and more can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION. So we can make music for you too. Sarah, where can people find you?
My name's Sarah Avampato. You can find me representing Full Press Hockey on Twitter at Right Said Sarah. That's WRITE Said Sarah with an H. You can check out my writing at Full Press Hockey, where I'll be talking about the Chicago Wolves, or over at Jewels from the Crown, where I talk about the Ontario Reign. Sean, where can folks find you?
I'm Sean O'Brien, and I know Kung Fu. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien81. You can find my stats work on Tableau. That will be up shortly for the new season. Still working out some kinks behind the scenes. I like to have a little bit of a data sample before I start posting stuff, just because it's all noise in the beginning, and I don't need people like screenshotting graphs and be like, look how great this play. Yeah, it's been 3 games. But you can find all of that on my Tableau at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase. That's the model, the graphs, all of it. Once again, bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. Thank you for tuning into the show. For Sarah Avampato, I am Sean O'Brien. Please dump and chase responsibly.